Hello, and welcome to Summary Notes Episode 1, Lesson 1.1a to Lesson 1.1e. If you have gotten to this screen, that means you've already watched the introductory video and you've already come back from the library with your guided notes, both pages printed out and ready to rock and roll. So as described in the introductory video, Summary Notes is going to help us summarize or help me summarize for you what you should have understood or learned in a series of lessons. So for example, as mentioned before, I'm going to go through lesson 1.1a, lesson 1.1b, lesson 1.1c, D, and E as well with you. And what I'm going to cover is I'm going to cover the information or the main concepts and ideas that you need to be able to take away, know, understand moving forward into our next lessons, and know and understand moving forward for when we have a summative assessment. So the reason why I'm doing this is because I found out in previous years that just letting you roll and try and take your own notes, even though I provide guided outlines or guided questions for you when you're doing your notes for separate sections, it's nice to have a teacher come in and be like, hey, these are the main ideas and these are the main concepts that you need to know and understand. So with that, let's go ahead and start with lesson 1.1a. In lesson 1.1a, and rather in all of these lessons, what we're trying to do in unit 1 is get you used to and recognize from previous math classes everything that you've learned about data. And so in these beginning lessons, we're going to be talking about data more visually, where it's going to be a little bit more easier to understand and learn about what it is that data is all about and the information that you're gathering in surveys. And then slowly, as we go through the rest of the unit, we're going to look and see how, as we move more abstract with our content, so more algebraic concepts, how we're still working with data, but we're just viewing it in a different way. So with that being said, a lot of what I'm going to be covering today are some concepts that you learned in previous math courses, but I am here to go over with you now how we are going to use that knowledge and apply that in algebra. So in lesson 1.1a, the main idea or the main takeaway from that lesson is learning about all the different ways that data or information in general can be displayed. So I'm going to take a highlighter and highlight the word displayed because that is an important takeaway from that lesson, is how data is displayed. And so there are 4 main ways in which we in algebra display our data or talk about our information that we are given or learn. The first way is by making tables or making a table to organize our data or organize our information. Setting up tables is a nice way to organize the information and learn and understand what it is that the data is saying. The second way that we display our data is through situations. So when I say the word situations, that might seem a little weird or it might not make sense. That's because when I say situations, I kind of want you to think in terms of like word problems or in words. You're describing what it is that you are seeing with your data. So you're using words to display your data. Number 3 is graphs. Graphs is the nice display that we use because it's a good visual, it's a little bit easier to understand, and it's easier to see that relationship between the numbers or between the 2 variables of that data or of the information. And then last but not least, the 4th way that we display data is through functions / equations. So it's important to know, and eventually, as we move forward, it's important to know how to create a table, how to describe information using words, how to create any type of a graph, and how to come up with or write a function and equation. Because as we get more abstract with our thinking or abstract with the concepts in algebra, we are going to have to be able to bounce from a table to a situation to a graph to a function, or we could go from a function to a situation to a table. It just kind of depends with what information that we are given. So what's important to note is the information that's on the side here. All of these ways of displaying data are related, but they're also different in how you set them up and how they look visually. And that's going to be more known as we get closer and closer to working with tables, situation, graphs, functions, and equations. So then moving on to lesson 1.1b. In 1.1b, the important thing to know is how to make 3 different types of data displays. So I'm going to grab my highlighter again and highlight the word make. So now we're going from looking at different data displays into actually making them. Now, the 3 sketches that you see to the right, these are all data displays that you have learned about and learned how to make in the past. But for the sake of lesson 1.1b, I revisit with you how to make these different data displays and the importance of them. So the first picture that we see here is in terms of intervals. And so that is a histogram. The second visual is made out of, or it has a number line, and it looks at specific categories. And then we have a bunch of these dots. So this is what we call a dot plot. And then the fifth one, there's like this box and then a line to the left or the right. This is what we call a box plot in algebra. And I know in the past you have talked about it being a box and whisker plot, but just to make it easier and not have to say as many words, we're going to be calling it a box plot this year. And if you notice, for the histogram, the dot plot, and the box plot, I've written near the sketch what's important to know about those sketches to help you make one. So for example, histograms always are in terms of intervals on the x-axis. Hence, we have bars that are connected. Dot plots on that x-axis or the number line, that refers to specific categories. And then that's how we can plot our dots. And then last but not least, box plots. They're made out of a 5-number summary, which is covered in your notes. And so with those 5 numbers, we are able to then draw the box and the whiskers. Next, let's move into lesson 1.1c. So in 1.1a, we talked about how to display or look at displaying data. In 1.1b, we talked about how to make these 3 specific data displays. And in lesson 1.1c, we are moving to learn how to describe our information or data. So with my highlighter, I'm again going to go ahead and highlight the word describe, because that is the main key idea or point that you need to get out of 1.1c. In order to describe our data or describe our information, there's 3 ways to do it. The first, as you can see here, is through what's called measures of center. So these 3 words that I'm about to fill in, you have already learned about these 3 words in the past math classes, and you already should know how to find these things when you look at a sequence or a series of numbers or data. But now I need you to understand that these 3 words are what we call measures of center, and they are what we use to describe data. So the first is the mean. The mean is the average of your data. So to find that, you add up all your numbers in your data set and you divide by how many there are, and then you find your average. The second word is median. So for the median, that is the middle number of your data. And so what's important there is when you have your series of numbers, you want to make sure you list them from least to greatest so that it's easier for you to pick out what that middle number is. Last but not least, the third word here is mode. Mode is the number that appears the most. And so again, you're going to want to, or it's nice to have your data organized least to greatest, and then you can easily see which number appears most often or which number appears more times than the others. So again, things that you've learned in the past, but they are called measures of center, and they help us describe what's happening with our data. The second way to describe data is by looking at the shape or the distribution of the data. And we mainly do this by looking at our histogram graphs. So as you can see, I have 3 histogram graphs down below here, and they all look slightly different. So sorry about that glitching. I don't know exactly what's going on. Hopefully I can make that better for the next video. But back to the shape, if you look at this first graph, again, I have an x-axis and a y-axis. But if you notice, I have this dotted line drawn down the middle. And if I were to fold this graph in half, each of these interval bars would somewhat match up and be symmetrical. So this is what we call a symmetrical shape. So with the symmetrical shape, what's important to know is that in order to then describe a symmetrical shape, you are going to want to use the mean